Well, welcome to the Helping Families Be Happy podcast, where we explore the often messy world of family love and relationships. I'm your host for this podcast, Christopher Robbins, the co founder of Familius, husband, father of nine, author, fly fisherman, backpacker, and aspirational musician based in the beautiful Central Valley of California. We hope to bring you nourishing, real life information about love, family, relationships, and life. Well, today we welcome Kimberly Collins Jermain. Now, Kimberly is a painter, a teacher, architectural color designer, and new author whose work explores coastal environments, weather phenomena, and the application of color principles for health and well being in architecture. Her new book, Nature of Color, Your Field Guide for Exploring Color in the Natural World, is published by Familius and will be available this September 2025 wherever books are sold. Now, as an author and educator, Kimberly shares what she observes in nature with students of all ages through the development of color programming, workshops, presentations, and with the new hands on field guide, Nature of Color, Kimberly offers a fresh, fun, simple approach to color theory, blending artistic and scientific exploration with the beauty of our natural world. This is a book for anyone involved in the world of color: architects, artists, designers, fashion, and all of the rest of us. So, today we're discussing color and how nature can instruct us about color. The information shared aligns with the Families Habits Learn Together and Play Together. And you can learn more about the Families 10 Habits of Happy Families by going to the Habit Hub blog on familius.com. And for the YouTube um, episode of this, please just go to the Families YouTube channel. Now, Kimberly, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
You bet. Now, before we started recording, I heard you say that that your students didn't ever want to read color theory books, and so you had to come up with something completely different. Is this accurate?
Yes. Well, I could put them on reserve for them and no one would take them out of the library and you just couldn't sit and read them in the library. They were very dry. So I spent many years, each year looking for new books on color that I thought they'd find intriguing or that would answer some of the questions that they asked. But I really had a hard time finding books that I enjoyed myself. And so I just decided, why not follow the journey of exploration that I follow myself, and show that if you tailor make the journey and the exploration to your own passions and interests, you'll be interested. You'll have fun.
Okay,
And so will your family.
right. So let's just talk about color. Um, Color is all around us, and I have limited understanding of this, but we have rods and cones. And can you just give our audience a basic understanding of how is it that we see color? What is happening?
Well, we have light receptors in the front of our eyes, and they are stimulated by the light that gets bounced off of the objects in front of us. And over the years, science has told us different things about our anatomy and our physiology and how this works. So you may have read a color theory book and it told you one way, and in the last 15 or 20 years, it's now understood in a different way. But the basics are that we have color receptors that are called cones, and they're stimulated. And then send a message to through our synapse to our brain that tell us about that color and give us the nuances and the blending of color of light to understand different colors. We also have receptors called rods, and rods give us the value, which is the darkness or the lightness of color. So when you're stimulated by a linear design in nature, that is more likely your rods that are being stimulated. And there are differences in men and women tend to be more stimulated by color, and men more stimulated by rods in their vision.
And define what that means. If women are more stimulated by color, men are more stimulated by shadows, or what does that mean?
Well, when I work with clients and I have a couple, the male usually wants to know how saturated or dark the color will be. They also are more interested in the shadows and linear descriptions of window frames or door frames. Those things are in their vision and they're thinking about them. Women tend to think about color and how it affects the family and the emotion and the activities of a family. And they have very specific likes or dislikes, um, as does anyone. And, there are many men that enjoy color and focus on color alone. But in general, it can be divided that way, and it has been understood that men tend to put more emphasis on the receptors receiving the information from the rods, and women the cones.
So you've answered a question that I think a lot of us have, and that is that people see color differently. Not everybody is seeing the same color the same way.
And that's true in even seeing um, out in nature, um, every person is building an image with the stimulation of the light that's bouncing off the things that are before them. So they bring their own memory and their own history of vision with them, so they interpret things differently. So no two people see what they're looking at, even though they're looking at the same thing, no two people will see it alike, but there's commonalities. And so when you're in a class, you can do some optical experiments and people will generally see it the same way. So that gives the artist a lot of confidence that they can use color as a communication tool.
Okay, so another question we have is, um, you brought up that women see color differently than men, and that they're more concerned with how that color impacts their family and their family relationship. So help us understand how color actually does impact a person and their mood and a family's dynamic.
Well, color is sunlight. And as most people know, there are people who are very sensitive to either a lot of sunlight or the lack of it. It really is an important function in our lives as humans. And if you are sensitive to your experience outdoors and understand your relationship with the sunlight that you're receiving wherever you live, it's different wherever you are on the globe. You know what makes you feel comfortable and confident, and you can actually adapt the built environment for those conditions. And that's the work that I do in architecture because I, from a very early age, needed a certain amount of sunlight in my home in New England because I was raised in Los Angeles where there was a lot of sunlight and we were outdoors all the time. And it was missing in the winter and for a good part of the year. So I learned to adapt. You can do it with paint color, you can do it with mirrors, you can do it with all sorts of ways of bouncing light. But it's really important, particularly for a family, that each stakeholder who lives in an artificial environment has an opportunity to adapt their environment to themselves, just in the way you watch an animal adapt the environment to themselves.
Okay, that's very helpful. Now let's start transitioning to Nature of Color, your book. You've chosen to focus on nature itself. It's in the title. So help us understand why going out into nature is essential for us to be educated about color.
Well, I think that nature is the source for everything, and I um, truly believe that that is where we learn the most about what's important to us as humans in this great cosmos. I um, myself feel best when I'm outdoors exploring. And we all have our own map to follow, the things that interest us and the things that are exciting for us outdoors. And I wanted to put the lessons and strategies of color out where I think people can use them while they're um, most interested and can adapt them to the things that they like to be doing, and can use for actual functional, reasons.
Okay, so your book, Nature of Color, is a field guide. It says that in the subtitle. So help us understand your book and how we can use it.
Well, it is set up like a field guide so that, each individual can make their own practice when they're outdoors so that they know how to approach the process that an artist would use to keep records, or a scientist to keep records of things that are important to them that they see out during a day of weather or out along the shore. Anything that becomes of interest should be captured in, a short sentence, a quick line drawing, just taking samples, leaves that seem of interest that are all green, but they're all different greens. This is an opportunity for you to follow the artist's process or a scientist's process for yourself so that you have passions and questions that you can follow up in a library or watching a movie, a film. This is your opportunity to explore outdoors and find where your interests lie and how color makes those interests more lively and important to you.
So I want to ask a question that might be a little bit off the path, but we'll come back to your book, Nature of Color. Is there an artist, is there an architect that you are very passionate about, and because of his or her use of color, and why?
Oh, I my passions for artwork are always, whatever I've just seen or um I think it's really important to follow what you like. And I tell students if a painting or a piece of artwork or something you see out in the wild keeps recurring in your mind over 6 months, that's a very important indication of something that you're passionate about or that has stimulated you in a very useful way. So I've always followed that rule that things that keep recurring in my mind, I try to follow with other activities that relate. And sometimes they don't work out. Sometimes they're science experiments that seem futile, but many times they do work out. And I find a new way to explore color or design by doing that.
Hmm. I wanted to share that, an impressionist painter that I always admired, and this might be wrong, but it seems like I have to feel like he almost saw the world the way he painted, and that was Van Gogh. His use of color was so dynamic and so different, and I wonder, maybe he saw color like that.
Well, so he did have I've read a number of books about Van Gogh, over the years, and one of the books was by an ophthalmologist who believed he was on a drug that was causing some of the, uh, halos around things that he was seeing, and, it's hard to know, but, painters have a lot of latitude, and they don't necessarily need to paint what they're seeing. Those that want to paint what they're seeing to share that vision with other people, try to get close to what they're seeing, but that's not an important element of having something to say about what you're experiencing out in the world. So, I like all different types of painters, and usually if I'm grabbed in the beginning, I'm interested for a period of time because it's usually very idiosyncratic or unique to that person. And it's like getting a taste of a new chef, that has made something that you've never tasted those flavors in that way before. It's important to follow your own likes and dislikes. And it doesn't really matter if they saw if Van Gogh saw that way, he painted that way in order to express it, and that's important.
Well, thanks for sharing that. It's an interesting part when you think about Van Gogh. So back to your book, Nature of Color. Um, so what is it that you hope people, when they've taken your book out into nature, what is it that you hope that they receive from this exploration that you provided them?
Well, I think it's a simple book. It's not meant to be onerous. As we talked about in the beginning, how color theory can seem that way. I find enjoyment following concepts and trying to figure out why something is the way it is or at how it happens. And color is a really good first indication of all sorts of chemistry, all sorts of physics situations. So much in nature evolves with a color palette. Just the way the seasons evolve is a color palette that's very unusual. And if you understand what's happening with the plants, it makes it a much more rich and varied resource for ideas for writing or sharing with other people. I think you can't help being an artist, but not everyone has those inclinations to share what they're seeing outdoors with others, but there is a process and there is a method, that's very similar to science, and I feel comfortable in both worlds because of the similarities in the method, and I hope that the book is used in a way that helps people keep records of their experiences so that they can enjoy them again or share them in a new way with other people.
Well, there we have it. Nature of Color, your field guide for exploring color in the natural world, available this September. But I can't wait to get a copy and go on my backpacking trips, which I always do. So it'll provide me a new opportunity to appreciate the color that I see, particularly in the fall when I'm just astounded at the colors that are created by these trees. So
Yeah,
you're
that's a
in,
good time.
yeah, you're on the East Coast, which you're blessed there to see.
Yeah, it's almost too much. Sometimes you come in and you look at your painting and it's just wild and you say, it should have been toned. Why didn't they tone it down?
Was there anything else you wanted to share with us about color today or your book that we haven't covered?
No, I mean, I'm hoping people just see as an invitation to get outdoors, go out the back door. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't really have to be called a hike if you don't want to call it a hike. Just find ways to enjoy um, using the resources that we have in our environment, which give us material for endless ideas.
Right. Well, Kim, thanks so much for joining us. Where can our guests find you online?
So I have a website that's Kimberly Collins Jermain, spelled out at um, .com. And so you can find my work there. You can find my architectural work and presentations at that site.
Wonderful. We encourage everyone to go there and also to find a copy of Nature of Color. Now, as we conclude today's podcast, I would love to thank Familius for its support in bringing the podcast to your ears and your heart. We'd be thrilled if you subscribe to the podcast and left a review. And when you're ready for that next amazing book adventure, we'd be honored if you chose a book from Familius. One step at a time, one going outdoors at a time, and appreciating color, we can make the world a happier place.